topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's Arthi with Diya Holistic Life Care and Light Up Your Life. Light Up Your Life. And I'm excited to be with you for another week. As you know, last week we spent some time talking about my light and my journey. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what's been happening this week and also to reflect with you on what's happening with you. I want to share with you that in a lot of folks that I've talked to recently in the last week, there's been a lot of transitioning and different ways of kind of coping with things. And really, I term it anniversary grief of COVID-19. And why I say that is because we're really approaching the year mark. And so the year mark of a different way of living. And so I want you all to be mindful and patient with yourself when you're reflecting on why you might be reacting and handling things a little differently, or you might be faced with difficulties in a lot of different arenas. And so what happens at different periods of grief are we have one, especially in that first year cycle, when we lose someone, or when there's a tragedy, or even something like our pandemic. You know, we kind of are monthly monitoring. And then by the 3 and the 6 month mark, there's a lot that's happening, especially at the 6 month mark. And if you kind of look back at the story, your own story during this coronavirus, you might have found the things that were happening with you pretty different around that 6 month mark. And then we get to the 12 month mark in the grief cycle, and that definitely looks very, very different. It has a whole cyclical cycle of the stages of grief, and you feel a lot of things that you can't always name. And so we're really approaching that period now come March, where it's now been a full cycle of a year of the coronavirus and of our different way of living. So I really want you to be patient and humble with yourself. And then that humble experience of sitting with yourself, knowing this is completely normal. It is part of living with grief. And of course, describing it in a pandemic setting is completely different, and how that works is a whole different type of grief. But I just wanted you all to be mindful with that. I also realized in my own personal journey this week that it was 18 months that my mom has passed, and 18 months is another significant milestone. I've been really missing her this entire week. And I realized that, the anniversary grief was coming up. And so it's just really important to be fair and humble with yourself on figuring out just exactly how and when things are going to happen. And it actually helped me to realize that, that anticipatory grief, what's called anticipatory grief, where I could actually define what was happening. And so yesterday, I just took a little bit of time and I journaled in the evening, and I wrote I have this journal that I write to her. And so I just wrote a couple of lines, and it really was very healing and therapeutic for me. And one of the things that I actually want to explore with you all today as a coping mechanism is actually working on journaling. And journaling is a really great tool. And our guest today, Dahria, Williams-Fernandes, and I actually have done an exploration of what we call grief and journaling, and we'll talk about a little bit about that as well. So let me give you a little bit of background about Daria. And I am going to glance at my notes for a minute so I don't miss anything. Daria actually is someone that I actually met through this pandemic on Zoom. Actually, we both went through our death doula training together, which is a kind of an end of life coaching module. But she has vast experience as a funeral director and as a minority business leader. She has over 30 years of experience working in the industry with her family-owned business. She's located in Boston, Massachusetts. And throughout her journey, she always has been looking at purpose and looking at life from death to life. And that's what our theme is today, looking at life from death to life and how you can have rebirth and how you can find purpose. And so today we'll be exploring with Daria our own partnership that's developed, but also her life story in the death industry, the funeral industry, and where her second business has come to play, the one that she has designed in addition to her family-owned business. So really looking forward to our conversation today, and you'll see why I adore her so much.
Good day, Arti. Thank you for inviting me. You are so amazing as well. And yes, we have had quite a journey together. So thank you for having me here today.
Daria, what's really funny is I had a whole biography that I had for you, but I didn't find myself reading it. So I just wanted to start by completely, for our viewers and our listeners, you have a wealth of knowledge and information. And honestly, you all, when you go on her website, you'll see the description that I had, that we had kind of described in a lot better detail.
There's always a plan, but sometimes feeling just what comes is the best way to do it.
It is. It is. So Daria, I wanted to start with the first question. Just tell us who you are. I mean, just start by describing you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm on the journey myself to figuring out all the pieces of me. I think we get to stages in our life where we start kind of exploring this whole aspect of like, who are you? What's my purpose here? What the heck is going on? That kind of thing. And so in my journey thus far, I've come to finding that I am a mom, a wife, a daughter, but also I cherish friendship and also the bonds that can really be, made here on earth. And I feel like the reason why we meet people is for a bigger reason than probably self. And as I've been working in the death care industry, it has kind of led me to recognizing that, life is, there's an infinity, there's the infinity. And then additionally, there's this inevitable portion of us that, has to stop, and our bodies get tired. And that does that mean our soul does, or does that mean our spirit still lives on through people and through the batons that are passed to us when we lose a loved one? So it's just basically made me recognize that there's just a lot when looking at life backwards. There's just so much to see. You basically see everything. And you say to yourself, well, gosh, how would I really strategize or map that out if I had the opportunity? So, but there's so much other layers, obviously, funeral director, a life coach, and a doula, now art therapist. I'm a little bit of everything. Kind of dabble in it all, just because I'm looking at life backwards, and it's really trying to figure out, like, why not try to tap into a little bit of everything, see what's really out there for me.
Totally. Daria, can you go into a little bit of detail and describe, because I was sharing with our viewers and listeners that for you, this is a family business. So can you describe how it is to work alongside and with your father, and where the journey began for you? Like, how was it to be in this industry as a child? Like, kind of the decades of your
the career. Yeah. I think it's been funny because I was a kid that my dad we own a funeral home in the city of Boston. And so my dad had grown up in the city of Boston, but knew that he wanted his family to have a little bit more in reference to, the life, the setting, the environment that they were growing up in. So he made the point to, actually take us to live in a suburban area in that only had so much money and was, started a farm, so recognizing that, a Black man in business has a lot of work to do in reference to establishing themselves. And sometimes, when you're talking about feeding the kids and keeping the business going at the same time, knowing it's your cash cow, there's some sacrifice, but then there's also a lot of work put in. And so me watching him do what he's done all his life, I never knew really what my dad was as a funeral director until he was roughly, I think I was probably like 16 years old when I realized my dad's a funeral director. And it was like, okay, like I wasn't the kid that grew up in the funeral home, none of that. So it was a little bit of a different journey for me than I've heard it's been for other funeral directors' children. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I ended up honestly realizing that as I was, he put so much sacrifice out, we're a minority funeral home. And in reference to minority funeral homes, it's one of those things where you service solely minorities most of the time. You're not given the opportunity because of what society has been reflecting, is that not everybody will cross the lines to be buried by another nationality or another race. So we've seen this happen quite a bit. And in that, it had driven me even more as I was thinking, okay, there's a sacrifice my dad has made, but then there's a community that is needing us, and with all that, I came out of college, which was with a pre-med, physical therapy, business management, right? I don't know how I got here, but I just knew my mother I never wanted my mom to be held hostage to a funeral director if something happened to my dad. So it was like something I was going to get anyway. Girl, that crept up on me. It was like, okay, you want to be what? Oh, what you want to be. Like, it's what you pray for. And then it comes to you and you're like, in this form, and my daughter even says to me all the time, you want to be this, Mom? And I'm like, I know, but the thing is, yes, but it's one of those things where over time, building this understanding of the career itself, but then also the psychology that's with it. And then also the personal journey that the funeral director a lot of the times has to take, because you're having to swallow that pill of mortality daily, looking at your mortality, looking at your family members' mortality. I remember when I first came into funeral service, it was recognizing the fact that my closest relationship at that point was with my mom. So when I'm seeing somebody grieving over their mother over the casket, I'm supposed to be holding them up, but I'm crying, they're crying. So then we're holding each other up, because I know that I will face that same test of time, and so it does become one of those things where, the steps have been kind of first starting off, like understanding it, and then getting into the legal aspects of it as when I became, went on to the board and became the chairman of the board for the state of Massachusetts. And, I had the opportunity to rewrite the laws, and it was just like, okay, let's take this and really make it make sense, because a lot of it had, some layers of it's an industry that's hard to get into because they would put barriers to entry. They don't want you to come into their area, So at the end of the day, there was a aspect of, okay, I need to understand this from a different perspective, get the rules, regulations, understanding, is the community really being serviced the way that they should be serviced? Are we as funeral directors doing all that we could possibly do? And so given that opportunity, I was able to service that. And then coming off the board, it was kind of like, okay, I did all that, but what about me, like me in it? And what is this do? What are the lessons that I'm from being a funeral director and looking at this life backwards? And So, that's kind of where we find ourselves today, where pause has come to pass. And it's really just recognizing that we need to probably stop in life, and as we all are forced to do right now in a pandemic, and really focus on, the whys. Why you're here, why are we in this situation? Is there anything that I can control? Or is there things that I just can't control and I need to put them somewhere? So there's some balance in there, a lot.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many things that you just said that resonated.
I'm like,
Always the
I
same.
didn't even know where to keep going because I had so much more, and I'm like, okay, you're going too far on that. Sorry.
No, we can always, the exploration of what life looks like and the meaning. And of course, because you and I do look more at that end of life.
Yes.
So we always look at, I mean, you've definitely been doing a lot longer than I have, but at the same time, the fact is what you are bringing up conjures so much. And the fact of like purposeful living. So if you could, if I asked you, like, what is your mission statement now? Like when you look at all this, could you describe what that would be?
I think the biggest thing is, and my mom was like the one who instilled it, it's about others, but it's also recognizing that to help others, you have to start within. You have to figure out, where your roots are. Really, what's stirring you up at the end of the day. Also, how could you, make that shift in your life that will push you beyond into your purpose, figuring out maybe your faith, figuring out, how can I get focused a little bit better? How can I, basically look at life and say, hey, I can literally take this and push it forward in the directions that are meant for me, but for me in my life. Do you know what I mean? But for the betterment of others. I think that's the big thing is, so as you grow, you make sure you're pouring out into others in different ways. And that's what pause is about, is people coming on, learning a lesson in life, going through a testimony, going through a journey, and, and saying, somebody else can hear this, or somebody else needs to know that they're not alone in this, And also, how can I pick them up? But then how can I go out to my community and help other people? And that's what pause wants to do is, it's transformative education. You know what I mean? A little bit of growing in each other. You know what I mean? I grow in the midst of the people on the platform growing. And so right now we're kind of just looking for the people that are wanting to put, their story out there, what they're the gems, the little gifts that they have been given, and that others should know. Sometimes it's just something that, like in your career, it was, it's something solely somebody in your career would know. Well, let everybody know so that they can make proper, choices in life. I'm big on our thinking, and how if we don't have all the information, how much thinking in depth can we do? So
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I can't wait to talk to you about pause and the mission statement and what it stands for in a little bit. But I do want to backtrack for a moment and talk to you about if you could debunk one myth about the funeral industry. And it may be more than one, honestly, Daria, because it's a fully loaded question. But what are some of the myths over the years that you've seen, or maybe in this latest chapter? Because I know for you, I always say, even in your industry, you're for your first responder when, funeral industry has been faced with so many challenges. And so I'm asking you two questions, actually. One, how have you faced as a funeral industry coronavirus in this year? What have you done? Then my second part of my question is also the debunking of some myths that we all have about death care and funerals, funeral industry, all of it.
Right. So take the first one, because it's so to the forefront for me. In reference to coronavirus, probably one that gets me clearly emotional, you know, 6 degrees of separation. Funeral service, we see those 6 degrees. Just due to the fact that when you go to one funeral and you deal with a family and you're working through the emotions and you're hugging and kissing and realizing this one and that one are family to this individual who's passed. But then when you go to a funeral service from somebody from a totally different nationality or totally different area, living in a totally different area, and you see those same people,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how much really our community is connected beyond what we know. And when you come to a funeral service, we used to have the opportunity to see that all coming in, you know. So one thing is we've lost that opportunity to recognize like the community that we actually live in and the community that loves us and that inspires us to do more, you know. But then at the same time, we're also in the situation where, you know, this virus has put us to focusing on, you know, what we don't have a lot, you know what I mean? And that becomes a depressing moment. And I think the thing is when you're seeing that those 6 degrees are now dwindling off because they don't have the connections anymore.
Right.
And so making sure that as we move forward, we keep the relationships, the connections, even if they weren't the ones that came through you, but you always heard that name about, you know, Uncle Bubby or whatever, maybe tapping into him, even if you didn't know him, you know, because the thing is we're losing that and you're seeing your whole community passing. At the beginning of this, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy in the middle of the night looking for just PPEs. You'd think that the funeral industry were going to be loaded with those. Well, when the federal government cuts your distributors off from receiving PPEs, then you as a funeral director are exposed. So when you're talking about us being first responders, yes, we are supposed to be recognized as such, but we're not. We're left out there, you know. We're not looked at as the funeral industry that's taking care of these people who are passing away at 500,000. Okay, and you still don't recognize that the funeral directors that are caring for these people are needing help in getting the PPEs in the first place. The same PPEs that you guys would be using in a hospital setting is not what we are using in a funeral home setting. And so in reference to exposure and getting the right information from the CDC to know how to move forward, how to care for them, can I give the families that are asking for my services the level of service that they want? Can I have that funeral service and still give them that final closure at the end of the day? That was all that question. As a person that has a chronic disease as well, you know, I have multiple sclerosis. So in reference to putting myself into the line of fire when I don't know what I'm getting into, you know what I mean? It could, I'm a, as you probably can tell, a little bit like huggy, close, you know, kissing, hold you up, whatever person. And I can't do that anymore. So it's, you know, worked on my inner me as well, because the daily feeling good about helping somebody has been weakened a bit because I don't have that face-to-face relationship with them and being able to then go to their house. I used to go to their funeral, make funeral arrangements at their homes. And so they didn't have to come to the funeral home. Mind you, you don't want to, you just lost your loved one, your mother, your father, your husband, and you think you want to get up that morning? No. You don't, you know what I mean? And so definitely not to come to a funeral home. So we were going into there. So there's just so many aspects, I think, of funeral service that have been affected. Obviously, the funerals themselves and having that gathering of people around us. And then at the same time, funeral directors getting on par on technology, you know, like you're a funeral director. Now you're like, AV, and I'm like, so that was a whole nother aspect. So, there's some investment that funeral homes need to do to be able to do that, plus getting these PPEs, keeping your staff safe. Like, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I want to go out there, but I know I'm one of those people, what I'm saying, on the list. So at the end of the day, I'm going to send my staff out there and not go. That kills me.
Yeah.
That kills me. You know what I mean? My dad is also, still living, and he's in his 70s, 70 something, you know what I mean? And he's like, you can't just let him go. And so he's trying to go in there, still doing embalming, still doing this, you know what I mean? And just sacrificing because the community needs it. If we stop, what happens? You know what I mean? It's actually been kind of sad to see some of the funeral directors that have been exposed to, the media because of the fact of like how you're getting hit with so many and nobody's recognizing that we can't do it. If we don't have a mask, if we don't have a glove, the movement of things is not going to be faster. And then also the amount of space, that we were initially working with, and then now coming into having to, make sure that every family member is treated just as well as your mother, as my own mom. Like, that's the key. And if I can't keep my basically services up to par, that's not going to work, And so, whether it's employing more people or whatever we need to do, that has been the case. I think the main thing is just making sure that those families have all the pieces of the puzzle, because the reality of the situation is the funeral service was never predicated on how many people showed up.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Well, there's a want, and you want to feel that. The thing is, right now, funeral service is become very intimate. I've actually found a lot of families are somewhat liking not so much of the people coming, kissing, moving, talking, kind of taking them out of starting the grieving process. Because the first step, in the grieving process, a lot of the time starts on the day of the funeral service. If you remember it like your wedding, you're like, wait, what did the cake taste like? Right? So funeral services on the day of, it becomes a lot like that, So if you don't have that opportunity to really like zone in on who is this person that I just lost, and what was their significance in my life. I usually tell my families, I'm like, listen, guys, if we were just thinking of one word, because if we think of that one word and we bring forward and shine it like a light on the day of the funeral service, because that's what people need to see is what they're taking from this person. It could be as simple as a smile. She always smiled at me in the hallway all the time. And if she just was the greatest, that is big. I love to be remembered as the smile. You know what I'm saying? That just brightens somebody's day.
I love that you're bringing up the theme concept. The theme behind somebody's life and legacy and purpose and especially the day of death, when you are saying that final goodbye to their physical body. I also really appreciate you. Notice I've been so curious about how is it for the families who may not have the gatherings of the 50 to 100 people that, especially for a lot of cultures, which has probably been a big transition. But then I also wonder how much of it allows grieving to occur in a different non-cultural, which you are bringing up. And so it'll be interesting to see, right? And especially to have these conversations with you. Where is this shift going to happen now post virus, that we have a new way culturally embedded each culture to look at what the day of death, forward to the day that the service is happening. What is it all going to look like?
Well, honestly, let me tell you what I hope it looks like. I hope.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I hope honestly there's some shine on one industry in specific, which is the end-of-life doula. It's crazy. I have been a funeral director for umpteen years, okay? And at the end of the day, I never even knew doula, right? And then end-of-life doula. And then when I found this industry, I recognized, oh, you've been doing that all the time. You've been doing it. So when I'm talking about the legacy and who the person is and their purpose here, there's some work to do, obviously, before the day of passing, when we're trying to quickly scramble and figure out where was she born, to just write the obituary. Okay. Because there's days before that we had some opportunities to really know the people that we love, and the thing is, like, starting doing legacy projects and things like that beforehand. So basically what I'm saying is that I feel like the funeral directors out here ain't been doing enough, right? But then also the end-of-life doulas haven't been getting the recognition from the healthcare industry in tandem with the funeral service industry.
Until you and I come along.
Yeah, this is it, babe. Well, this is why I say I honestly feel that when you get a funeral, get an end-of-life doula with it. You're gonna if you're pushing pre-arrangement, you need it all. You need full, well-rounded
comprehensive care is
it's not just about estate planning or end-of-life planning, get your funeral together and figuring out where you're getting the money from and the life insurance policy. It's not just about that. It's a lot about what is, when we're talking about others and helping others, really, what are you here for and what you're going to leave behind? You know what I mean? Whether it's just a tagline or it's additionally that smile, or you can create the foundation if you want to, but just recognizing that, you have something to give.
Absolutely. Dahria, can you now describe for our listeners and our viewers, some of them may not know what an end-of-life doula is, such as myself, who when I was looking for a program, I was looking for end-of-life coach, right?
Oh, yeah.
Diya is looking at coaching module through the lifespan, and here comes death doula, right, as a program. So I also in this journey have learned. So A, can you describe what a death doula is? And then B, why don't you go ahead and share like Paz's vision and the doula program that falls within it, if you don't mind.
For sure. So in reference to end-of-life doula, I found that it's actually an individual that usually comes into somebody's life about maybe, usually at the time of a terminal illness. Now, the thing about it is, who's actually telling somebody about this person is where I was talking about the healthcare industry kind of lacking on even letting people know that somebody's out there to do this, to kind of hold their hand. So they're actually an individual that would come into a person's life, maybe knowing that they're having a terminal illness and they have only so much time to live, and basically somebody to talk to, somebody outside of their family member that can hear what they're going through, their fears, their regrets. They're, trying to figure out, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Now I heard this, now what? Because a lot of times, like when I was diagnosed with MS, it was one of those things where, okay, what? And you're freaking out, you're going through all this depression, going through these hills and valleys, and it's just recognizing, wait a minute, hold up. The day of diagnosis is just the day. It's not that now it's the D-Day, you know what I mean? And you're going out then. There's some really, I think it's a poignant time to look at to say, okay, if you're telling me I only got so much time to live, what am I going to do with it? And that's what the death doula can actually do, is give them a purpose towards that end. And, also getting a good understanding of what they might want or who they might want around them at the time of their passing. Sometimes people are wanting a whole cast of thousands. Some people, are like cats. They kind of just want to go off and by themselves.
Yeah.
Some people want, they're obviously their kids around them. Simple thing like maybe music. What music would they want played at that time? Remember, their ability to communicate would not be there then. So if you knew this before that time period, to be able to play that song, you know what I mean? To be able to have those people around prior to. Now, obviously, not all of us get this opportunity.
Right. But to make it accessible is the piece, right? Like, as you and I have talked and hospice and what their role is, I mean, they sometimes, they just can't do it all, right? And this piece of puzzle of the death doula who comes in and provides support on that emotional and the physical need of touch. Also, I'm sure you appreciate the caregiver support, because then there's this aftermath for the caregiver family that they get to do legacy projects with the death doula.
Exactly.
Or exploration of, and how would grief look like when we have a death doula involved, you know?
Right. For sure. For sure. I think the thing is, that's why I felt like funeral service, should be something that would just embrace the death doula, because the thing is, you're honestly growing with these families anyway as a funeral director. Like, we'll have a funeral of the passing of a grandmother, right? And then this little girl is sitting there with this loss. And then years later, oh my God, look how big what are you doing now? She got a job, she got kids of her own, so we're going together with our families, you know what I mean? And so to take it to the next level, I really probably disdain the fact that when I meet somebody, it's just for a moment, and then if I see you in the grocery store, I don't know if I want to say hi, because I feel like I'm the Grim Reaper walking down the aisle. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's to remind you that somebody's passed in your life that was close to you, so it's trying to really like change the framework of the funeral director and how much they could do. Funeral directors in tandem with those death doulas, whether you want to be a funeral director and be a death doula, or you want to actually support the community of death doulas and bring them and embrace them. That's what I would hope would come to pass at some point in time, because we are already working with them before, we're working them at the time of, and we do aftercare with the families. So it only makes sense, you know what I mean? And if the healthcare industry is already too stressed about it, that's a different story, but promote it.
Absolutely, the promotion. Can you talk now about Pause and Do Love and all the programs and just everything that is your baby?
Yes. So it is become my legacy project. And I am developing it over time as I continue to meet wonderful people like yourself. It's crazy because even at the time of somebody's passing, I am sitting there and I'm realizing I'm building this relationship that could be only a second, but at the same time, it has a level of coaching to it. And people are needing that one person outside of the family at that point in time, just to drop some beans to, and the thing about it is that led me to getting into life coaching. I have my partner, Janelle. She is amazing. She's like, you're doing it anyway. You just need to be a life coach. And I'm like, oh, well, I end up doing that. But then even life coaching was like, okay, but I know you want to bring art into this, because I think there's some therapy that is behind this, you know what I mean, that people need. And so that's where, life coaching, art therapy came in. And then the End of Life Doula found that, and it was just all encompassing. I think End of Life Doula is what made me recognize that life and death, I've already been looking at that. There's one tagline that it keeps running through my head that, like, honestly, from death comes life. If we're thinking in that realm, and figuring out, okay, from this passing, was it in vain? And so also, let's just talk about adversity across the board, your personal adversity across the board. There was a reason why you're going through or why you're in what you're in. You know what I mean? It might beat, it might this, it might that, right? But at the same time, there's a reason. And so it's figuring out, okay, if there's a reason that I'm here, what is it? And then when I figure it out, I need to grow in it a little bit, and then I need to give back to somebody else, right? So that's what Pause is about. So it's really about just honestly you and your journey, and then how you give back to others. And so Pause is a movement for a moment. You know what I mean? Just to take some time out. And so we have on the platform, it could be live focus groups. We have videos. Additionally, we put up motivational speeches. We promote other people's initiatives as well. One main thing is that, we want to right now bring on motivators that can speak. Or if you're already doing something in your community, put it on pause and allow people to hear it all over, you know. But it's really a transformative educational platform that is about empowerment, you know, growing.
Transformative education.
Yeah, huge.
And I'm
huge.
sure we're not the only folks who feel like, you know, the things you learn in school, right? The book smart, right? You have to be, the goal is to be book and street smart, but actually reality is you need to be more street smart than anything.
Yeah.
And the fact is, what domains? Financial literacy, emotional literacy. What was that being taught in school?
Yeah. Hello. None of it.
How do you prepare for retirement?
Right.
What is your passion? What is parent? What is your passion for career? Right? We get so embodied in what we want to do for a salary, and we have so many people who are really making tons of money but unhappy, right? Because they actually never got to funnel in their true calling, and then they don't know how to go and back because. So this whole platform of transforming education is just such a beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the transformative education is something that you even as a motivator are continuously doing over time. So we're actually living and working with each other and growing with each other as you're moving forward. And right now, you know, we even have some fun stuff. Like we have Amanda Merrick, who is just classic with her account. She's like our accountability coach, and she is got some great things going on with even game nights or movie review nights, or, you know, it just had comedy shows and things like that. So we're really trying to even bring in some entertainment to it, because when we're talking about pausing, sometimes your pause is not what, you know, you sitting down. Obviously, the journaling is big, you know, but sometimes you just need those moments to just check out.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so it's been great to have those things come to pass. We have some exercising, some step, which is a little bit much, but also some resistance training. I don't know. But the guy that does it, his name's Daniel, amazing guy, but killed you. But we're trying to have a whole bunch of things. I mean, like yoga.
Stop shop.
One stop shop. That's it.
So what, Dahria, right? When we converged, when we were bringing up our organizations after we went through our program, the idea was we were trying to have comprehensive care, and that's probably what aligned us.
Yes, you know? Definitely. I know that has, because your organization has obviously the spectrum too, right? And so it's great to be able to align each other, and you have a place to put your educational aspects of things, you know, because we have a learning management system connected to Pause. It's a little bit beyond the normal, you know, website. You have the website and then you go beyond into this learning management system. Why I felt that was necessary is because it created your place specifically to go to, your Pause location, your profile with the courses that are for you that you think you need to take, also some, you know, live media aspects to it, also discussion rooms, groups, things like that are all in there. Also the motivators that are coming upon the platform, they just have so much more to be able to give back and continuously help the people that they are committed to. Because I think it's sometimes we can have those moments, but at the same time, we want to recognize that it's a journey.
Totally.
It's a journey.
So Dahria, you and I can always talk forever, but we're at our last moment. So what is something you just want to leave, parting thoughts or anything that you would like to share with our viewers?
I don't know. That's a big
question. I know.
Loaded for sure. But I think honestly, just recognizing that we are going through hard times right now. And that I think people need to recognize that we were born during this time for a reason. And I think it's because we have the capacity to get through, you know, and recognizing that we've been all given the gifts And it's just really figuring out how they line up so that we can move forward in them, and then hopefully move us all forward. I mean, but we've got this. It's like, I think it's a tough time, but it's calling upon us to be more mindful.
Yes.
And I would just encourage, people to be more mindful in their daily walk and their talk. I think thinking of others, also recognizing others, communicating with others, opening and having the hard talk conversations that you really kind of have refrained from before, I think is necessary. And I think we all need to know who each other is, because we are going through times where you're thinking to yourself, okay, wait, does she like me because I'm of my color or my nationality or my, so sometimes having communications and knowing the people around you, and then also allowing them to speak what they know or what they don't know, and you giving them the opportunity to speak into that. So definitely, I think that's the gist of it. Is you are enough.
Yes, you are enough. Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh, that book, You Are Enough,
Yes.
The children's book. I feel like that needs to be an adult book.
Oh, for sure.
Well, the website you all is listed below, and if you'll take a look at it, it's a beautiful website. Dahria has really worked hard to put it together of this beautiful vision. So take a look, and her contact info is there as well. So Dahria, thank you so much. And of course, we're on the radio. To give you the website is www.pause4amoment.com and info@pause4amoment.com. And so thank you, Dahria. And thank you, listeners and everyone out there. And again, just want to end with the fact, when you light up your life, it's about looking at all of it. And that means the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the minute that you look at the bad and the ugly and put it in a different lens, it really can be magical. So we'll see you all next week.
Sounds good. God bless you.
All right. You too, my dear.
Bye-bye, babe.
Bye.
The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.